All right, I am going to get started. Good morning. This is, I don't even know what day it is. It's Wednesday. And welcome to our webinar, Setting Yourself Up for SEO Success with Nick Musica. I am with Score Monmouth. I am a mentor and a volunteer with Score Monmouth. And we are a free mentoring service for small businesses. We are powered by the SBA and we offer free mentoring services to small local businesses. Myself, I'm with the Monmouth chapter, but we are actually a national organization. So if anybody ever needs any mentoring or webinar resources, feel free to reach out to us. You can check our website out at monmouth.score.org. A couple of small housekeeping things for today. We're going to be taking Q&A throughout the webinar, and I would encourage you to please put the Q&A in the Q&A function in Zoom and not in the chat function, because it's much easier for us to moderate it if it's in the Q&A function. We do not use the raise hands, and we will try and keep an eye on the chat, but again, just encourage you to use Q&A. We encourage questions, we like them, we want them, so feel free to ask any questions you want to. To answer you, Lisa, yes, this is being recorded. It's going to be on our YouTube channel within a few days after the webinar, and also we will circulate the slides that are being presented today as well through to the attendees. So without further ado, I am going to hand over to Nick. Nick, you can take it away.
Okay, thank you, Claire. Thank you, Score, for having me. Good morning, folks. Yeah, as Claire said, we're going to be talking about setting yourself up for SEO success. And what we're going to cover today is a few items: domain registration, website hosting, and content management systems. We'll get into how to think about how to deliver SEO results for long-term and setting expectations to do that. And lastly, we have some tools at the end of the slide. Some are paid, some are for free. A little bit about me. I've been working in SEO since 2003, co-authored a book in 2009, taught at NYU for a hot minute before moving out to California. I presented in San Francisco and Germany on the topic. I've been an in-house SEO for a long time. My claim to fame is working for a local publisher here in San Diego, where when I started with the company, we were getting 85 million visits a year. When I left 6 years later, we were up to 185 million visits a year, all through SEO. I started my SEO and content consultancy, Optics In September of 2019, and I'm formerly from Monmouth County, now living in San Diego. My last residence was in Long Branch. So we may have some folks on the line who have various backgrounds and understanding in SEO, so I just want to give a baseline for what we're talking about here. As for Wikipedia, SEO is the process of growing the quality and quantity of website traffic by increasing the visibility of a website or a web page to users of a web search engine. What that looks like is, for example, when you type in Wikipedia, what is SEO, we can start to see a couple items that come up in the SERP, the search engine results page in Google. Up top in number 1, we have a featured snippet. Number 2, we have people also ask. And then number 3 is what used to be called the classic blue links. Something maybe more of us can identify with is a car insurance query. We're right up at the top because it's so highly monetizable. We have a block of ads. And then we get into local listings because we have a different intent here. People may want to talk to a local agent. And then we get into the 10 blue links. 10 blue links are continued. Apparently news is a thing for insurance. So there's some news links here, and then the search engine results page is capped off by another set of ads. So what makes SEO tick? Well, there's 3 things. There's content, there's links, and there's technical. Content is what you say about yourself on your website. Links are what others say about you when they link into your website. And the technical is how Google accesses your site, aka where it all begins. If you don't have good technical, everything else is going to fall down. So our focus today is a little bit of that technical. Again, we're going to cover domain registration, website hosting, and content management systems. For folks who don't have a domain, what we want to do is go with something simple. .com is very popular today still. If you can't get it because there's so much competition these days, .org, .net, .info are good alternatives. If you're looking for what's a list of top-level domains, Wikipedia has a lot of those. You can think about top-level domains in the context of what is a a good extension to have, .com, .org being the extension. Like I said, choose a memorable domain, short, few characters, no hyphens. There used to be a thing in SEO about direct match domains, where if you registered bestcarinsurance.com, that was a great choice if you want to rank for best car insurance, for example. That's no longer a ranking factor, so don't be concerned about that. How you register a domain, you can easily search for domain registrar, choose one. Any of these guys will do it for you. Most folks are familiar with GoDaddy. Network Solutions is also another popular one, but they'll all do the job. This is where it starts to get critical in terms of setting up your site, choosing the right host. So there's two types of hosting. We have shared hosting and we have dedicated hosting. Shared hosting is definitely the cheaper of the two. You can think about it this way. You have one website on a single server, your website, that is shared with a bunch of other websites, company A, B, C, D, for example. If one website is hacked, there may be a chance that your site's going to get hacked. And this is because they may not have kept their plugins or their technology up to date, and that's going to roll downhill to all the other websites that are in that shared hosting environment. Additionally, if their website is getting a ton of traffic, that's going to most likely make your website slow. So using the housing metaphor, you could think about it this way. With the shared hosting, you have a variable amount of roommates in your apartment. Sometimes there's 0 roommates because your website is fast. Sometimes there's 5 and your website is slow. And sometimes the milk goes missing because that's just what happens with roommates. With dedicated hosting, it's exactly as it sounds. You have an allotment of resources for your website. It's predetermined. The number of visitors, the disk space, the bandwidth is all predetermined when you get into your hosting package. So you can think about it this way, again, using the housing metaphor. You never have any roommates unless you invite them in, and you always have milk in the fridge because you're the one who bought it and you know how much you drank. In terms of dedicated hosts, these are two WordPress-centric hosting platforms. These hosts work with WordPress.org, not with WordPress.com. There's a difference, and we'll get into that a little bit later. And the reason I chose WordPress is because it's used by 30% of all websites online. These hosts are managed hosting, which means they help you focus on your business and not get tangled up in the details of hosting. So your site goes down, you pick up the phone, you call them, or you send them an email. Both of these guys, Flywheel and WP Engine, offer a development environment, customer service, security certificates, backups of your site, and a faster hosting environment compared to shared hosting, which is an SEO ranking signal. Breaking down the items that dedicated hosts will give you and the benefits from an SEO perspective. The managed hosting, the description is, they keep your website live, you focus on your business, downtime impacts rankings. That's the basic benefit. A CDN, if you're not familiar with what that is, it's a content delivery network. It has basically, it's remote hosts, you can think about it that way. There's many nodes across the country, and the idea is that your content will be delivered faster to the end user because of those various nodes. So your hosts may have their main data center in Monmouth County, for example, but they could have a node in San Diego, and I could get your site just as fast as you can, regardless of where we're sitting. The dev environment is also called a staging environment. It helps ensure that your site is SEO ready before you push it out to your live environment. So you can do a bunch of testing. You can, if you're using WordPress, for example, you can put a bunch of plugins up there, take them down. It doesn't do anything to your live site. You can change themes. There's nothing that's going to impact your live site. And that consistency of having your live site being something Google can come back to time and time again is going to build trust. That builds rank, and then you get traffic. Site backups. Your entire site is backed up for a rolling 30 days. You can go back 30 days at any point in time, choose one of the instances, and redeploy that site to the production server. This is important because accidents happen, plugins go bad, security gets compromised, and so these backups really help to mitigate all the risks, including SEO. SSL certificates. These are basic security items, and these are table stakes these days. This wasn't a thing, we'll say 10 years ago. But because of e-commerce and because of the internet just being the insecure place that it is, this is now a ranking factor. I mentioned WordPress.org versus WordPress.com. WordPress.org is when you can download a theme, you can upload your plugins. It's something you can host on either shared or a dedicated hosting platform. WordPress.com is hosted at WordPress.com. They're two very different environments. I wanted to leave this here just as a reference for folks because it is confusing. But when I talk about hosting environments and dedicated versus shared, I'm talking about WordPress.org specifically.
We had a quick question on hosting with Flywheel or WP Engine.
Sure.
Would you need security protection on your website if you hosted with either of those?
I use Flywheel. Thank you, Claire. I use Flywheel, and they have a nifty little button that says secure the site right now. And you click it, and in about 5 minutes, the site's secure. Specifically with the SSL certificate. So now that's just one form of security. You can think about security in terms of layers. If someone, and think about it this way. If you have a bike and you have a bike lock, if someone is well prepared to steal bikes, they're going to get the bike. Similar is true with websites. You have someone who really wants to get in there, there's a good chance they're going to. But the idea is to have layers of security. So the first layer of security is having a good host and having that SSL certificate on top. There are plugins that'll help you out, but this is fundamental. And looking at, go ahead, Claire, sorry.
Sorry, then we just have one other quick question that said, can you just in a, broadly speaking, explain what a plugin is?
Sure, a plugin, which is specific to WordPress. Shopify, which is another popular application, has apps. They call them apps. It's really the same thing. They're little they're little applications that run on the website. So for example, with speaking just to WordPress, you have the host that we talked about. You have WordPress, which is the technology. On top of the technology of WordPress, you're going to have a theme, and in the theme, you're going to have certain plugins that do certain things. So you may want a carousel, for example. That doesn't come specifically with WordPress. You may need to get a plugin for that. Or you may be running a directory. There's a plugin to manage a directory. WordPress is just the base level technology.
Thank you.
Taking a look at Flywheel, and I use Flywheel, like I said. It's not that expensive. I've been super happy with it. Been using them for, we'll say, a year now. And before that, I was using shared hosting. But after going into my own business, things just got a little more important for me. So I decided to get a little more serious with my website. In terms of choosing a CMS, which is a content management platform system, it's basically how you publish content. There's two popular options. That's not to say there's not more out there. But again, most people, 30%, use WordPress. There's also Shopify. You can think about it this way. If your mindset is publishing first and then e-commerce second, WordPress is probably the platform for you. If you already are in e-commerce, you may already have Shopify, and most people think about Shopify as e-commerce first and then publishing second. They both do a good job. From my perspective, again, and my perspective is SEO, WordPress does a better job than Spotify. There may be also folks on the line who have websites in Wix or Squarespace or WordPress.com, for example. From an SEO perspective, we just don't get into these. We don't believe it's a good use of time or money for ourselves or for our clients. That doesn't mean these website platforms don't have their place. It's just not very productive for SEO. And it's because of the technology is what it comes down to.
So there was a question from somebody that asked about Squarespace users. And I think just based on what you and I spoke about yesterday, it's the SEO is not, to put it in layman's terms, the SEO is not as configurable or workable in those platforms. Is that,
there's going to be
the right statement?
Yeah, and there's, to break down a little bit more, there's basically two things that are going on there. One is either the controls aren't there to optimize, or the technology just doesn't serve itself to being optimized. Wix, for example, I was working with a gentleman 2 years ago. He published a couple pages and he had links coming to a site that I was working with at the time. And Google never found the links because the Wix site was hard to crawl, it was hard to access for Google. Therefore, the links, which are critical to SEO, were never found, and that benefit from his site going to my site was just never realized. When he called Wix to talk to them about it, they said, no, everything is fine. And I kept monitoring the site, and everything was not fine. So regardless of what you may see online of Wix and SEO is good and Squarespace and SEO is good, you can believe what you want, but from my perspective, they just don't do it.
Cool, thank you.
Yep. SSL. So there's some free, there's some low cost options. If you're just about content, low cost and free options will be perfectly fine. If you're an e-commerce website, you may want to get something that's a little more hefty. I would talk to your host about that. That's not my specialty, but I'm just trying to give you a sense of what is most important. If you're not sure if your site has SSL, you can load your site up in a browser. In Chrome specifically, there should be a little icon on the left-hand side. You can see here for Optics In, you click on the little lock and it'll show you what's going on. Sometimes you may have a mixed message. Some items are secure, some other items are not secure. That's an SEO concern as well. But this is where you can start to do the research around, do I have SSL on my site or do I not? Is it working, is it not? So now that we got through the basic setting up of a website, domain, hosting, etc., let's be sure that we get your SEO off on the right foot. I have a couple questions here. Just to start to tease out in terms of a litmus test, is now a good time to dive into SEO? Just like any other marketing channel, it's going to demand your time, it's going to demand resources. So let's get into a couple questions here. So do you have a website that's set up well? If yes, great. Now could be a good time to jump into SEO. Are you a startup? Are you looking to drive sales? If so, SEO may be a good idea. Or are you looking to get funding? If you're looking to get funding, maybe you just want content on the website because you're not really in a sales driving mode at this point. You may have been using paid media a lot and maxed out your spend. We work with a lot of folks on that end. They spend a lot of money every month in Google or Facebook, and they're maxed out. They're looking for another channel to capitalize on. Google and Facebook may have compliance issues depending on the category that you're working in. You also may want to diversify traffic sources. It's not necessarily great to have all your traffic coming from one source. If everything's coming from paid and they shut off your campaigns, that's not going to work out great. If you have all your traffic coming from SEO and Google makes an algorithm shift that doesn't benefit you, that's not going to be great for your business either. So to have this diversified marketing mix is really quite important. That's where SEO comes in, depending on what you're running today. And also, if you want to invest in a traffic channel that pays dividends over time, our philosophy is you do the right things over time and you're going to get good results. And those results are going to last for a long time. Unlike paid media, Google ads, for example, where you put $1 in and once your dollar is spent, you have no more traffic coming. That's not necessarily true with SEO. Setting SEO expectations. We work with a lot of folks who say, great, after we do this work with you, whether it's an audit or building content or promotions, how long are we going to see results? And it's a bit of a trick question. It's also a trick answer. The basic rule of thumb is that it takes 3 to 6 months to start to see SEO results. So start to see is a super important phrase there. That doesn't mean you're going to get a ton of traffic. It just means you start to see the efforts starting to build in terms of ranking and or SEO traffic. But it's important to understand how much traffic you're going to get based on the effort you have. So for example, if you wanted to rival NerdWallet, you're going to be using much more time and resources than if you were a hyper niche company focused on socks for snowboarders, for example. So it's a basic time times resources math equation. Another way to think about it is to find where your site fits in this graph here. You could be a new category. And if you were to think about California, not so much in New Jersey, but it's coming your way. Cannabis is a relatively new category. It's been around for a long time, but as a business, it's relatively new. So we'll say about 7 years ago, give or take, there was a company that came online called Weed Maps. What they did is they grabbed all of the medical marijuana dispensaries in California and created a directory. Now it's extremely hard to displace them because it was a new category. No one was there. There was no challenger. Those things don't come up all that frequently, but if there's a new category from an SEO perspective, I would jump in and grab it and give it some attention. You may also be in a fragmented / noise category where there's a lot of websites on a particular topic, but they just don't do all that great with their SEO. This is an opportunity. There's a lot of sites, they could be on Wix, for example, that produce a bunch of content, but they're not doing it well, or their architecture is banged up, or their link structure, their backlink structure is not doing great. And that's a place you can get in. Mature categories, think finance, think NerdWallet, think the Godfather movies. We'll get to that in a second. So if you're going to be if you're going to take on a big player in one of these industries, don't bring the knife to the gunfight from the Godfather movies. What you want to do is really come in strong with the number of resources. You want to come in with the bright expectations around time it's going to take to get the results you're looking for. There also may be a holes in market scenario that you may fit into. So think about cheap insurance, affordable insurance, which has been around for a long time. People have been searching for that for a long time. But enter Metro Mile, insurance by the mile. That was a hole in the market, and they capitalized on it. And that fit very well into the existing queries for cheap insurance and affordable insurance. You also may be in the middle here with niches, which be a combination of all of these characteristics. Managing your SEO. There's a lot of noise out there. There's a lot of noise on the internet. You search for how to do SEO correctly, you're going to come up with 10 different ways, and some of them are going to conflict. And depending on that information, some of them actually may be right, and it's just really contextualizing it, which is what the internet does not do a great job at. Our perspective is, when it comes right down to it, the majority of SEO is about doing the basics really, really well. It's not exciting, it's not sexy, but there's a clear process. And if you do it well, you're going to get a good outcome, which brings us to the philosophy around it. If you do the right things consistently over time, you're going to get a good result. It may not be 3 to 6 months, it may be 9 months, it may be 12 months. You may have to put a little more resources into it, but the idea is just do the right things smartly and do them consistently, and you'll get a good outcome.
There's a question or a concept. I have a question behind that. So we always talk about, when we talk about social media and social media marketing, we always say don't dabble, right? If you're going to do it properly and be consistent in it. Is that kind of is that similar to SEO and managing SEO? Like, be consistent in it and constant?
Absolutely. Yeah. So the questions could sound something like this on the SEO side, Claire. It could be, well, do I really need a dedicated host? Can I do shared hosting? Well, you could, but you're not going to get the result that you want ultimately. Or, building content can be expensive and time consuming. How about 10 pages? How far is that going to get me? Well, how many pages do your competitors have, and how long have they been on their website?
Right.
Right. We need to have a good, reasonable starting point, because you're right. You don't want to dabble, because you may walk away from it with the perception that SEO just doesn't work for me. All those negative things I've heard about SEO or insert marketing tactic here, it just doesn't work. Well, you're right, it didn't, but for good reasons.
It's sort of like you wouldn't try and fix your car if you weren't a mechanic. So if you don't fully understand SEO, you might not want to try and dabble with that. Would that be a sort of a fair thing to say, in a generally speaking?
I think there's a few things, and we're covering them here, that if you do them well, which goes back to the strategy, if you just do the basics really, really well, you can go a long way. There's some books, there are old books out there even, that will talk about the basics. So I think you can get far, but there's so much noise that it on the internet, just at large, that it sort of builds this insecurity around, am I doing the right things? And when there's a
Right.
million and one pages online, it is hard to determine, am I doing the right things?
Okay, thanks.
Okay, so which leads us right into doing it yourself, hiring out, or coaching.
That was not a setup. that was completely coincidental.
Also really good timing. So doing it yourself, the pros are you're going to know your site better than any agency ever will. You're going to know the strength of your resources, your own bandwidth, your own appetite, and your people's SEO savviness. You're going to be your best SEO champion. The cons are it's another thing to manage. There's always competing priorities. SEO is a dynamic space. It is a specialty. Things do change. You need to keep up on it. And it could take a while to get everyone internally on the same SEO page, especially if there's competing priorities. You can hire a consultant or an agency. The pros, you get SEO expertise immediately. The cons are not all SEOs are created equal. Like a law firm, you're paying for the law firm, but you're really hiring a single lawyer who's going to work on your case. So there's a lot of bigger agencies. They get a mature SEO lead coming in, they sell you, and then you have a bunch of folks right out of school doing the work. It's a very common model. In the spirit of animations that are over-engineered, here's the hot hiring tip. There's a reason why SEO has been called snake oil. It's gotten a bad rap. It's because people promise things and they don't deliver. I was recently working with a client who was paying about $500 a month for SEO, quote unquote, SEO services. And I saw some of the work that they delivered, and it just wasn't worth anything, honestly. They didn't look at a lot of the fundamentals that are going to make her site tick. So we're working on those now, and it's going to take some time, but the transition from one company who just wasn't doing a whole lot and getting very questionable backlinks, which could help in the short term, but be catastrophic in the long term, was at play. So now all those things need to be undone. So in terms of hiring a good SEO, take a look at their track record. What have they done? And talk to people who've worked with them in the past. How are they to work with? They may be skilled, but are they a good fit? Do they talk your language? Do they understand your domain? Do they understand where you are? All those things are important. There's also a hybrid approach of coaching. The pros are you want to do it yourself, right? So you get to develop your SEO skills and apply them to your own website. The con is it's one more thing to learn, but at least you have expertise holding your hand while you do it. Then it's just a matter of carving out the time and putting the work in. Here are a few tools. We have some paid tools, Ahrefs, SpyFu, SEMrush. Our go-to is SEMrush. We also have used SpyFu a whole lot. It's $30 a month. You can cancel anytime. These are all keyword research tools. They're SEO performance tools, competitive discovery tools. They're really helpful for tracking your own ranking as well as snooping on your competitors to see how they're ranking and what they're ranking for. Under the free tools bucket, we have Answer the Public, which is a freemium model. You can do, we'll say, 5 queries on it to get some keyword research out of it, but then it's gonna tell you to go to the paid platform. You could go back again tomorrow, but if you really want to use it as a tool, you may want to just get the paid version, but the free version does a lot. Google Search Console. This is free, and this is basically your direct connection with Google regarding your site and SEO. We don't work with a client unless they have Google Search Console working for their website because it's that valuable. Google Analytics. Everyone may have this already on their website, but it bears a little highlight here. This is going to track a bunch of information around your website traffic. We look really specifically at SEO data, but you can get a bunch of information around geography, time on site, things of that nature. And lastly, we have Google Ads, which is the paid version of SEO on Google. It also comes with a free keyword tool. So even if you don't want to run ads on Google Ads, you can still sign up. I think you need a little bit of a budget. We'll say 30 cents a day is what I heard. to gain access to the tool. And then you can basically use it as a keyword research tool, which is where all these other tools get their information from anyway. And that's all we have for today, folks.
Okay, so we have some questions. Do you have any suggested plugins for Shopify to get better SEOs?
Plugins for better SEOing.
Yeah.
Was that it?
But yeah, for Shopify.
Yeah, specifically for WordPress, we have a few plugins that we load up immediately. One of which is Yoast SEO. It has a couple wonderful tools in there. It controls your site maps. It controls meta tags, titles and descriptions, for example. There may be some other, depending on your hosting environment, this is where it gets a little tricky, some other tools that will help you with your page speed and downloading. WP Rocket is another good one. There's a few out there, but those are good starts.
Okay. The padlock bar, you were talking about Chrome browser earlier, is the padlock in the search bar, does that imply SSL?
It does, yeah. So you can click on it and you can see exactly what it's all about. And I say that because you may have SSL on your site, but you could have mixed security, which means your site does have an SSL certificate. However, in your source code, you could be pulling from non-secure HTTP, not HTTPS files, and that'll give mixed messaging, and that's not great.
Okay. Is Drupal, D-R-U-P-A-L, good for SEO?
You know, I haven't worked with Drupal in a very long time. I wouldn't feel comfortable answering that question. I just don't know enough about it at this point.
Then we have, so I'm going to read the question. We design and build websites and also provide SEO. Is it still important to name file assets, as in images, etc., with pertinent text? For example, we've always steered clients away from their photo library names like image001.jpg, etc. Is this still very important / effective for SEO results?
It is, and it's going to be more important depending on the domain that you're in. So, for example, car insurance, happy guy with happy insurance policy, probably not all that helpful for anyone other than maybe a screen reader. And I was a little snarky with the description, but for a screen reader where someone has visual issues, that could be helpful for them because it's going to help them read the page specifically. For a search engine, there's going to be some categories, call it, let's say it's artists, music artists, let's say it's vacations, where that is going to be tagging images specifically is going to be more important. For example, you want to tag, random example, Steve Tyler from Aerosmith as his name and his band, because that's important, because people may search for that image in Google image search, as well as beautiful places to go to vacation. They want to know what Bali looks like. They want to know what Hawaii looks like. But happy guy with insurance policy is going to be a little less important.
Okay, great, thank you. Then another question is Facebook Pixel similar to Google Analytics, and do we need both?
Yeah, they're going to be specific to the platform. So if you, my expertise is not in social media marketing, but there's typically, for every paid channel that you're working with, there's a pixel associated with it, largely. And you could use that for tracking, you could use that for attribution. Attribution is always a tricky topic, but it could help you understand how you're spending your dollar and are you getting any results back from it.
Okay. We have, I have Squarespace. How should I go about changing it to a better option?
Yeah, it's going to depend. I mean, people will go into Squarespace or Wix for basically one of a couple reasons. One, a friend told them, they said it was so easy to use. It also was easy to use. They hate WordPress. They heard things about it. They don't like it. Gets hacked. It's true. Also, that's dependent on the plugins you put in and the host that you're on. or it's because of budgetary reasons. So if now is the time to get off one of those platforms, my suggestion would be, I'm a fan of WordPress, and I wasn't for a while because of the insecurities that it had. But once you tie things down and you start to work with it and you start to understand the system, that's a good place to go. So from a migration perspective, there's a couple different things to remember. One is you're going to have to extract everything off of your website and put it into another website. You can easily do that with Flywheel as the example, because they're going to have a staging environment after you get your hosting platform. So you can take all your content, put it into the staging platform, all your content on your current website in its current platform, take it all, put it onto your staging platform in Flywheel, get it all looking good, and then what you do is it's something called reporting the DNS, the domain name server. And you say, instead of having my website hosted at company A, I now want it hosted at company B. And within, depending on where you registered your domain, somewhere between 5 minutes and 24 hours, your new website's going to be live on the internet. I hope that made sense. Let me know if it didn't.
Sorry, I had you muted. It made sense to me. So if you need further clarity to the person who posted that, just re-ask a question. So then another person has asked, so all I need is dedicated hosting and good wording on my pages?
Can you repeat the question, Claire?
Is all I need dedicated hosting and good wording on my pages?
Okay, so going back to the things that make SEO ticks, it's content, it's links, and it's technology. In order of operations, technology, content, and then links. That is important, especially for a new website. You want your foundation done correctly with technology, and you want good content on the site. And that's a tricky phrase, because it depends on how much you can produce over what time, and what do your competitors look like in terms of their content. And that's important, one, just because of content building and having a number of hooks in the water for Google to grab and to rank, etc. But what's also important to remember is there's going to be some content that's just table stakes. You're going to need to just produce it because people expect it on your site if you're specific to a topic. They expect the information there. And then there's going to be the content that separates you from your competitors. And that's going to be the highly engaged, highly shareable, highly linked to content. So those are two different conversations. So the answer is yes, but it's a very simplified yes.
Okay, thank you. Also, so can I fix, this is another question that we have, can I fix all of my incorrect listings without using Yext or paying for them?
There are services out there that can help you change your listing in one or multiple places and not chase it on each and every website. There's a lot of websites that will grab third-party information, and so you can minimize it. There's also a lot of websites that don't update their information after they grab that information from a directory, for example. So you still may have errored information on those websites. So yes, but also maybe you can get 80%, but you may not be able to get 100% in correcting that data.
Okay, and then we have in Shopify, is the SEO at the bottom of each product page where you would put the keywords, writing your description of the product and title of the product with proper keywords?
Yeah, so whenever you see keywords in a CMS, chances are that's not going to do anything for you. When Google came online, they never looked at the keywords as a ranking factor, and Google's been around for a while now. And the reason they didn't do that is because they were gamed. Keywords were gamed from day one. So if you had a car insurance website and I had a car insurance website and you said best car insurance 10 times and I said it 5 times, you would rank better than me. So Google just never incorporated that into their algorithm. So you can flatly ignore that. There may be reasons for keywords for other functionality on the website, be it site search, be it tagging, something like that, but that's more of an advanced topic. For basic SEO, CMS, and keywords, you don't need them. In terms of title tags and meta descriptions, they're very important. Title tags are important for two reasons. One, because they show up in the search engine results page and people read them, and they account for rank. Meta descriptions, on the other hand, they do show up in the SERP, but they never counted for rank. And both these two items will encourage people to click or not to click.
Sorry, I had to put my dog outside. Okay, I think that's, so you finished the answer on the SEO at the bottom of the page. Does anybody have any other questions? We don't have any posted in the Q&A, and I just want to make sure if you have questions, please, put them in and we'll try our best to answer them. In the meanwhile, Nick, I had a question. Is it important to do the SEO and social media marketing and all of those things is a combination of, if you have an advertising budget or a media budget, where would you get the best bang for your buck, or would it really depend on your product and what it is you're trying to achieve?
It's going to be the latter, yeah. So I work with simple numbers sometimes. So if you have $1 for your media spend, you need to figure out the best way to spend that on your media. And media is, I'm defining it as social media, be it paid or not paid, search, be it paid or not paid, even radio, let's just throw that into the mix. You can think about it in a couple different ways. Either I really want to nail this one channel, I want to focus on it because that's what I want to do for reasons that make sense to you. So I'm going to go into paid, I'm going to go into social, I'm going to go into SEO and hunker down there for 6 months and let it see what it can do and optimize from there. Or I'm going to have an integrated marketing approach where I'm going to choose the channels where I believe my folks are. And maybe that's believing because of anecdotal evidence, or it's because you've done some deeper research. You need to make the decisions that are good for you and you feel good about. But they're going to be two very different approaches. So there's a couple things to consider there. A lot of folks can get by with having really good SEO. A lot of folks can get by with having a really good paid campaign. A lot of folks can get by with having a focused social strategy, but not everyone can. And the risk with hunkering down into one of those channels is that things do change. Campaigns in Facebook do get shut off. Google is going to change its algorithm for paid or for natural search. And you don't want to see half your traffic and half your revenue go missing overnight. This happens frequently. Businesses go out of business because something changes in a specific marketing channel.
Okay, great. Thank you. Then we have, when beginning with Flywheel, do you recommend a place to purchase templates?
To purchase templates in Flywheel. I never saw that they have, so I may have said something that was confusing to someone possibly. So Flywheel is the hosting platform and it's specific to WordPress. There are some paid templates you can get, paid themes you can get for WordPress. From my perspective, if you're going to hunker down into that theme, it's super helpful to have those, the options that paying a few dollars will give you. Absolutely. But you need to love the theme. You need to be dedicated to the theme.
Then somebody has said they use Namecheap and then Google Sites. Is Google Sites okay?
Namecheap is okay. Google Sites, I don't think so. Based on what I saw a while back, and a while back was just an email I got, we'll say 2 months ago. They were changing Google Sites. So it was sort of the same thing as GeoCities from 20 years ago. But I would not go with Google Sites. I would go with hosting on a dedicated or shared platform versus Google Sites or something similar.
Okay. Does it make sense to have reviews on Google My Business listing or on the website? I'm unable to integrate Google reviews on my website.
It makes sense to have reviews on your local listing on Google, yes. And if you can get reviews, Trustpilot is a good way to get them on your website specifically. And those are managed by Trustpilot. They're not scraped from Google and then applied to your website, which Google does not want. It's one of those things Google doesn't want. Also, it would be, and this gets into a little more complicated topic, it would be a version of duplicate content, which may or may not help you out. Probably wouldn't for the long term. In the short term, it may. A lot of things help you out in the short term. But I would encourage having a specific review platform like Trustpilot if you want to do something like that.
Okay. Then there's a question, how important to SEO are many incorrect listings?
How important is SEO for many incorrect listings? I think this is related to local listing data, if I'm picking up the theme of in the questions. And it is important. So, and a lot of things are important. So Main Street, STREET versus ST versus ST period. That used to be a really big thing. I don't know if that's different anymore, but my come from is this: make it as easy as possible for a bot to get through it. Don't let the bot make decisions for you. So as clean as you can make your data and consistent as your data, and this goes back to a technical conversation around SEO. It's the same thing, just different words. Make it consistent, make it clean, make it simple. That's it. That's going to do way better for you than it's a mess and it's a little dirty in spots. You want to make it simple for the bot.
Is it almost like to coin a sort of a data phrase, but garbage in, garbage out?
Yeah, it is. And then it's a matter of, well, is it a little bit of garbage or is it a lot of garbage? And who makes that decision? Because there's a threshold with the bot where it's okay and then it's okay. And then all of a sudden it's not okay. And the only time you notice when it's not okay is when the results show it.
Okay. And then there's a question, are you available as a consultant? That's been posed by someone.
I am, yeah. So we really don't get into hosting. I just thought this was foundational. I wanted to share this with people because it's heartbreaking, especially to hear from, and this happened 3 months ago, to hear from a friend that she was super jazzed up about her Wix website and now help me SEO it. And I said, it's just not a good use of time. No matter what we do, I just firmly believe we won't get a good result. I think you should go to WordPress. And she's like, oh my God, I can't. I just did my website. I can't go into WordPress now. I have other things to do. Got it. I understand. So the simple answer is yes, we do help folks. We can give you some advice around hosting like we're doing here. And our specialty is making sure your site has all the controls to give it a good chance to rank. And then we work with you to build content to do that. We also do the coaching that I mentioned.
So I think just to answer that, so Nick's contact information is on the screen right now, but also we will send this out after the webinar as well. We'll send out a copy of the presentation to everyone. So feel free to reach out to him directly. Oh, there was another question popped up. Another question is, our listings, I suppose local listings are all over the place from the past, mostly our name. How do we fix those?
Yeah, it's going to be a similar answer to the question posed earlier, which is go to the source. Go to, there's a few data sources, and if that individual wants to email me, I can probably help them out a little bit better than trying to get into the memory banks right now on the spot. But there's going to be a few places, a few vendors where we can go change your listing, and then it'll waterfall from there. This was a common problem at the publisher I was working at a few years ago. We had a lot of local listings. People would come to us to change it, and we couldn't change it. Even if we changed it on our site, it would have gotten overwritten the next day, next week, next month, whenever we got the next data feed in. So it's really important to go to the source, and then it waterfalls down.
I had you muted, sorry. Another question is, what key evolutions do you see near term for SEO?
Oh, that's a great question. I would highly encourage still the basics, because people tend to forget about them and still do them very, very well. and I would take a look at the SERPs to see what's going on there. They're constantly changing things. Video has become a bigger thing recently, we'll say the past 3 years, where that's showing up in the SERPs more. It's very accessible now, right? Like you just didn't have a camera, your phone was once a phone, and now it's almost anything but a phone. So you can produce a ton of video on there, and people are, and that's now showing up in the SERPs. So video is probably going to be a bigger thing than it is today. Additionally, that little phone you have in your pocket, your site needs to continue to work well for those queries that people tend to use when they're out and about. So if you're a local company, we'll say you have a pizzeria, because why not? But pizza near me, food near me, your site needs to be optimized for those local queries. So it's going to get more personal, and it's going to get more integrated in terms of what you really want to see in the SERPs, what's most helpful, and video is going to be one of those things.
Great, thank you. So if there's no other questions from anyone, I'll just leave the Q&A box up just for a second, and I'll just give a quick spiel. Nick, thank you so much. We really appreciate that. That was very, very helpful, and I think the content was valuable. To everybody who's on the call, thank you for attending. We appreciate it. It will be on our YouTube page within a couple of days. It will also be available. We'll email the presentation out to everybody. SCORE is, as I said in the beginning, a free mentoring service to small businesses. It's nationwide, but we represent the Monmouth County chapter, even though we can all be jealous of the fact that Nick is in San Diego and enjoying the warm weather. So I think one other quick question, Nick, is how do you feel about using Doodly for videos? I'm
not familiar with it, but
it's the cartoon, like the cartoon videos instead of.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's the type of video. It's not necessarily a hosting platform.
Correct. Okay. I believe so. I believe that was the question.
Okay, so I would. My go-to is all roads lead to Google. At least that's true today. That wasn't true 20 years ago. There used to be Google, Yahoo, Bing, and I know those things still exist. But the conversation is largely Google. So what shows up in Google search is most important. So Doodly, if I'm saying it correctly, is probably viable. However, what you want to do most likely is host it in YouTube, because YouTube is what serves up in the SERP most often.
Okay. And then I'm going to take one last question, and then I think we'll sign off. So just one other question regarding reviews. I don't think this is a typo, YOTPO, but then I cannot have same reviews on both.
I don't know what that platform is. I don't know what that is. I can't answer that in a way that I feel confident about. Yeah. Okay.
All right. On that note, Nick, thank you ever so much. We appreciate it. Any questions from any of the attendees, you can always email monmouthscore@gmail.com and check out our website if you're interested in mentoring. And on that note, I'm going to end the meeting. Thank you so much. Thanks, Nick.
Thanks, Claire.